Welcome, viewers, to yet another edition of the Geoeconomic Show. We will be taking up the aftermath of the tragic attack in Pahalgam on tourists who were holidaying in Kashmir. We all know that these tragic deaths have resulted in a break in relations between India and Pakistan. The Cabinet Committee on Security met recently and took a number of decisions, including suspending the Indus Waters Treaty agreement, which has been there since the 1960s, and cancelling all visas of Pakistanis who are right now in India and asking them to leave the country. And of course, we have shut down the Wagah border, which will stop the little trickle of trade that was still continuing, despite Pakistan having virtually banned imports from India. Let us now take a look at what can happen next. Of course, the option of a surgical strike a la Balakot is always there on the table, but that is something which decision makers have to take a call on, because a decision on a surgical strike obviously means we have to war game and have to see what the other side might do in retaliation and be prepared for those retaliatory measures. But there are a number of steps which can be taken without going to the extent of escalating towards an actual military fight, gunfight. So what are those? Let's look at them. One, of course, is to ban overflights over Indian territory, which would obviously mean that India would also get banned from flying its aircrafts across Pakistan. So to go to the west, that is to Europe or to USA, one would have to either take the Gulf route, that is via the Arabian Sea, or above, which means you go through the Russian route. It means more expenses as far as our airlines are concerned. They will have to spend more money on fuel. But perhaps if it is necessary, India might go in for that move. But the other thing, which is a bigger thing, is of course the naval blockade. India can enforce a naval blockade on Karachi. Karachi harbour is the lifeline of Pakistan. 95% of Pakistan's foreign trade goes through Karachi, and that's worth about $100 billion, $70 billion of imports, and about $30 billion of exports. Pakistan would be economically crippled if the Karachi port is blockaded. But then a blockade of a port is considered a military action in its own right, and the Pakistanis may respond by attacking our naval ships or our interests elsewhere on the high seas. So that is a possibility, but that is not necessarily the route India might take. Let us now take a look at what the Indus Waters Treaty suspension really means. Now, interestingly, 3 rivers of the Indus, which feed the Indus, have been given to Pakistan, and 3 rivers have been given to India. These 3 rivers, we cannot really start damming them or storing water here. We cannot deny Pakistan its rivers water, not because we would not like to do so, but because it is difficult to dam those rivers in the Jammu Kashmir valley or in the Himachal Pradesh from where some of these rivers start, or to even store those waters. We don't have those capacities. To be able to build that capacity would take years. So this suspension in that sense does not mean much. There are 3 rivers which go through Punjab and Haryana, and India does have dams on them, does have reservoirs on them, but then again, we don't have the reservoir capacity to be able to stop the flow of water into Pakistan. Of course, the other issue which becomes hostage to the entire India-Pakistan conflict is trade. In 2023-24, India-Pakistan did trade worth about $4 billion between the two of them, with Pakistan exporting more than India did. In 24-25 till January 25, India exported about nearly $500 million worth of goods, despite Pakistan imposing huge tariff, almost you can say banning Indian imports. But besides this direct trade, there is also an indirect trade between India and Pakistan. Indian goods are imported into Pakistan via Singapore, via UAE, that is Dubai, and via Afghanistan and China. So these goods are estimated, there are various kinds of estimates, but it's more or less recognized that about $14 billion worth of Indian exports go to Pakistan every year through these routes, and the prices of those goods are at least 25% to 30% more than what they would have been if there was direct trade between India and Pakistan. If it is estimated that if ever India and Pakistan were able to resolve their differences and direct trade is established, Indo-Pak trade could be at least worth $30 billion. But then, for that to happen, terrorism, cross-border attacks will have to end. Till then, there are other options too, which are semi-military. The ceasefire along the LOC can be terminated by the government of India, which would mean regular exchanges of artillery and gunfire between the two sides, costing not only lives of soldiers on both sides, but also perhaps civilians on both sides. That is something which would not like to see happening. But then everything is on the table, every card is on the table.